I find myself reading material online and feeling unsatisfied, which makes me think that consumption of material online is not enough. And when I have this experience, what it seems to indicate to me, the conclusion that I draw from it, is that the alternative to consumption is production. It's not just written material that I read. There's other texts online, there's YouTube, social media, the news sites, alternative news, various sources of media, not just reading but absorbing, consumption of information. And there's still information that I need to consume, there's still information that I need to learn, but production seems to be key, because I see people arguing about things that to me seem settled, and nobody seems to be saying the things that not the things that I want to hear, but nobody seems to be discussing the things that I want to hear about, the things that I want to discuss. So I have to discuss these things myself. The person who comes closest to saying the things that I want to be said, to discussing the topics that I want to be discussed in the way that I want them to be discussed, is Jordan Peterson. There are others. There's David Pacman on YouTube, another admirable public intellectual, but with a much smaller profile. Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast, the network of people associated with him. There's a sense of something genuinely new about sort of the so-called movement, although it's so poorly defined. The supposed intellectual dark web. The problem, of course, is that the radical centrism of these thinkers, the new alt-centre, is similar in the alt-right and the alternative, more traditional alternative politics of the left, and being angry and sneering and inclined to dunking on and debunking their ideological opponents or those who they have differences with. And instead of finding compromise and common sense and things that everybody can agree about from both sides, they primarily concern themselves with attacking both sides. They have constructed for themselves a position where they're licensed to attack everybody who disagrees with them, to fire upon both ends of the political spectrum. Although it seems like they primarily reserve their criticism for the left, but they do discuss things like racism and the alt-right. And sure, that's not what needs to be discussed. Even me saying that, discussing problems with them. ContraPoints is great as well. ContraPoints is another really quite positive public intellectual. Although the theatricality, lighting and set design and characters are not things that I'm particularly interested in. Mostly probably the video that I found most satisfying of hers, that I appreciated the most, was her criticism of Jordan Peterson, although that's a topic that she's not particularly interested in. So, yeah, Jordan Peterson talking about nihilism, the response to it, the idea that you may believe you derived this position logically, but you have to accept the possibility that you believe it, you choose to believe it because it appeals to the worst parts of yourself, the need for purpose. People complain about Jordan Peterson, he is problematic, and people say that, he has routine, common, sort of widely acknowledged self-help advice that's nothing special, and then he draws these inane connections to a weird kind of pseudo-mysticism and kind of reactionary politics, and there's a mistake made by his audience who conflate these things and bring it all together and think that he's this extraordinary intellectual, where he's really a charlatan. But I don't believe that. I think there's a deep connection between all these areas of his intellectual program, and I think there's a justification for the way that he conducts himself, but I think he's made errors. He because of his unique position, lacks the scholarly depth in some areas to really comment on some of these issues, and he is mistaken about various ideas, and he has been taken by what is effectively an overarching theory of everything. He has been seduced by the all-encompassing nature of his ideas to follow certain paths and construct for himself certain intellectual pieces of intellectual machinery that aren't justified, like his commentary on postmodern neo-Marxism and his conflation of these different historical trends, and his thin reading of historical texts and of Marxist material, his conflation of a bunch of stuff, his distortion of these ideas is problematic, but the problem is there's too much dunking on people, too much debunking, and it's not about debunking Jordan Peterson. The thing that's most interesting about Jordan Peterson, and the reason why he's so close to what I want in a public intellectual for our time period, is that he seems like the first person to truly build something new. There's this novelty, this justified novelty about taking something from our historical moment and building on it and going further and moving us out of nihilism. And, you know, ContraPoints is great, David Pacman is great, they're sort of getting on with it. But Peterson is looking at the problem of our time and trying to build upon it. And there's the huge following that he has shows that I'm not the only one who wants a certain kind of message, who feels a certain kind of lack, a certain void. And, you know, all of the traditional sources of authority and have been discredited to varying extents. Religious authority, nationalism, political ideologies, traditional political parties, widely discredited. We need something genuinely new, and so that's the void that Peterson fills. I think he's inadequate. He's like well, I shouldn't say inadequate. I don't think he's enough by himself. I feel like he's a minor prophet, somebody who presages the coming of one greater than himself. He's too old, it's too late in his lifetime for him to fully achieve what can be achieved in a lifetime by a prophet. So he's a forerunner of a greater message. And I may be as well, you know. There could be somebody greater than myself coming after me. That's always a possibility, who knows. But just what I wanted to say is that Peterson, where I disagree with him, is that he returns to the past. He returns to traditional sources of authority in Western culture and identification with a particular set of traditions. And that's fine. It's not wrong. It's something that you can do now, for now. Find your footing, find your ground. But we need to move forward. We need something global, something which the entire world can embrace, something which can unite humanity as a species, because the possibilities, that the things that we can accomplish, they're vast beyond imagining. Perhaps not beyond imagining. I can imagine a lot of things, and I'm sure you can too. So a lot of these possibilities that people discuss, ideas like the singularity, people struggle to think about what life might be like beyond it. And the things that I see coming, they're overwhelming in their brilliance. Not my ideas or anything, but the brilliance of the possibilities, the brilliance of the things that are yet to come, and the things that seem inherent in our current reality, the things that will be brought forth. And of course it's a time of great change and apparent instability. It's a phase transition from one mode of being to another, but that's what you get. Phase transitions are chaotic. So it seems like a time of unprecedented risk, but it's a time of unprecedented opportunity as well. And that's part of the message that I want to get across. Distinct from Jordan Peterson. With Jordan Peterson, the things that he says, it seems like there's this desperate need for meaning and for purpose, and that you better get your act together, because if you don't, the risks are too great. So yes, it is a time of great risk, but it's a time of great opportunity, and I want to focus on the opportunities and the positive. You need to learn. There are basic imperatives. Nihilism, cynicism, they're not justified anymore. This post-ironic. I know we're all allergic to sincerity a lot of the time, but just cynicism is a response, almost a fearful reaction to sincerity. Is also sneer-worthy. This idea of being, oh, look, I'm so edgy. That's become distasteful as well and familiar. It's not justified, because if you choose to believe in nothing, you're still making a choice about what you believe. It's not more rational than believing something. It's picking a position. It's more rational not to pick a position, unless you can find strong evidence for a position. And there are things that I believe there's strong evidence for. There's still the great uncertainty that is associated with nihilism, but my response to the uncertainty isn't to believe in nothing. It's just to not believe with certainty. It's not certainty of disbelief. It's not dismissal. Imagine the most wonderful, mystifying set of possibilities that you can. Imagine that religion is true, that a God does exist, that God can speak to humans and is concerned about their individual affairs. Or consider the religion of Buddhism and the ideas contained within there of enlightenment and transcendence of suffering. Imagine an afterlife where you can live forever with the people that you love, and your childhood dog can come back. Imagine all these wonders and more. Imagine biological immortality. Imagine the possibilities of technology, science fiction. None of these things may seem true or real or apparent, but their mere possibility, it excites me. It may be able to excite you as well. The time is not right for despair and for giving up and for this kind of arch teenage suicidal cynicism, this mimetic laughing at everything, artfully not giving a shit, being ironic about being ironic. There's something new, there's something beyond that. It's not a return to beliefs of the past, but there are new possibilities, and it's a different way of thinking. Instead of requiring certainty, and because of that adopting the certainty of disbelief, you can instead embrace the possibilities of uncertainty instead of the fear associated with it. I mean, you don't need to deny that. It's about becoming your whole self, acknowledging your dark side, acknowledging the darkness and fear and terror and sinfulness within, the possibilities that you see within yourself and the possibilities out there, all of the terrible possibilities as well. I mean, that's what makes life exciting. That's the contrast. There's risk, yes, but there's opportunity as well associated with it. There's brilliance, there's heroism that's possible in this world. And the time that we're living in is one of unprecedented significance. You have the opportunity to take meaningful action on an unprecedented scale. There are things that you can achieve, things that we can do in this time, which have never been seen before. And they're gonna happen. That's the feeling that I have about the world that we live in. It's one where I feel like anything is possible. And the wonders of mathematics and of science and of philosophy, the things that I spend all my time considering, and of language and art. The problems that we face as well, the terrors of racism, this resurgence, the political problems, the division, the chaos of our times, the possibility of apocalyptic destruction, the environmental crisis, the need to conserve and take care of our environment, to see ourselves as guardians of nature. There's purpose, there's a mission, there's inspiration to be had. So I just wanted to share that feeling that I have with you.